Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Bi-Weekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the June 30th, 2025 Town of Exeter Select Board meeting. I'd like to wish my colleagues on the board good evening, respective town staff, certainly those in attendance and those watching at home. We have a pretty full agenda this evening, so we'll get started. I'd like to introduce the board. To my right, Selectman Dan Chartrand. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Our Vice Chair, Selectwoman Molly Cowan. Good evening.
Hi, everyone.
And to my left, our clerk, Selectwoman Nancy Belanger. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Selectwoman Julie Gilman. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Our Town Manager, Mr. Russ Dean. Good evening.
Good evening.
And to my right, all the way down, our Assistant Town Manager, Melissa Roy. Good evening.
Good evening.
Our Recording Secretary in the back, Joanna Bartel. Good evening, Joanna. And my name is Nico Papakosendis. First order of business this evening is public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to come forward with any comment to the Select Board. We do ask, though, that if your comment is relative to an agenda item, you wait for that agenda item to come up. So at this point, I will pause and see if there's any public comment. Step up, please.
Good evening, Mark William Damsel, excuse me, at 10 Newfields Road here in Exeter. I want to personally thank the Exeter Dispatch and the police. Every morning I go out to my porch and have a coffee, and yesterday morning, early morning, I stepped out my back door and I smelled a real loud smell of gas. I asked my wife to call our propane provider. Excuse me, you're gonna bear with me. And I called the fire department. The fire department showed up, could smell the gas. In my porch, there's a bulkhead. They had a detector, went into my basement, and on my property line, I have a big propane tank, and they checked that. And I live beside where all the natural gas comes into town, and they went out back and checked that. And they had called Unitil as well. Walking back from my backyard, one of the firemen looked at my porch, and I don't know how he seen it, because it's hidden in plain sight. Seen my barbecue. And where am I driving? He goes, when was the last time you used your barbecue? And I'm like, geez, I don't know. And I went over and took the barbecue cover off and opened the doors, and the tank valve was left open. And the tank in the barbecue was sweating. And I guess, from what he told me, really smart, I believe his name is Troy Wise. Propane is heavy and goes down. And it was all underneath my porch.
Ooh.
I'm here personally to thank the fire department. I don't know how this guy, because he was about 20, maybe 25 feet away from my porch and seen my barbecue. I don't know if a light went off in his head, his training, his intelligence, or a combination of all of the above. And he said with the heat last week, the tank was actually sweating. So it was some type of a miracle that happened.
Wow.
I'm still a little overwhelmed. By
Sure,
the
of course.
situation.
It's understandable.
I just really want to thank the fire department, the training, the technology, the intuition of this young fellow. He's 30. I talked to him a little bit after. I told him to take the rest of the day off. Was really just, I can't explain how he's seen that, because it was beside the bulkhead, on my porch, behind my picnic table, behind all my flowers, behind my easy up, and I just don't understand. There must have been a reason for that to happen yesterday morning. I had to go and sit down for about an hour with a sigh of relief and have about 15 more cups of coffee just to realize that it was a miracle on Newfields Road yesterday. I thank the fire department for their expertise. They're great. The dispatch walked me through it. They were out on several calls. When I was on the dispatch, she had a 911 call. But the fire department showed up very, very shortly after I had received the call. And I truly want to thank the town for that. But I have one more request.
Sure.
And I believe it's on the agenda about Park Street Bridge. And because of my health, I can't stay the whole meeting, the agenda. I would like just to comment that I've lived beside the railroad for my entire life. I believe CSX has bought out the rail. Back in the day when I was a kid, which wasn't that long ago, it was a real short train, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Now it seems like the rail, the cars are getting more and more and more stacked upon. And when I sit on my porch, I was going to time it yesterday, and I exaggerate a little bit. The train is going by, taking about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. I think Park Street Bridge is a vital, life-saving part of this town for the ambulance to get to or from the hospital. I don't want to hold anybody up. And I really do think the fire department and the police in this town deserve a big round of thank you. And I called Justin today and told him that the guys that they have at that station, the fire and the police department, the dispatch, I don't know what happened yesterday. It was a miracle. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Mark, hold on. First of all, I'm glad you and your wife are safe
Yes.
and healthy and okay.
I don't know about healthy, but yes.
Thank you for coming and sharing that with the board and with the public, and I'm glad Fire Chief Paisan and our retired Fire Chief Wilking are both here to hear that. And I appreciate you taking time to come out and sharing your story with us and your words of compliment for the department.
Need to give thanks when thanks is due.
Agreed.
In my profession.
It's nice to hear a happy ending, a happy outcome.
Yes. Thank you.
So thank you. And I particularly liked how you stepped out and went to something on the agenda, but you quickly brought it back to where you started. So compliments for that, too.
And I appreciate all of you board members, Russ, Melissa, too. You all have a good night. I can't make the meeting. I've got some health problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
I know, and Chief Paisan,
Really,
please extend our thanks
Yes.
for all
Yeah.
of the things that you do.
Yeah. All right. Any other public comment before we move forward? Okay, seeing none, there's nobody online, we'll move forward. Next order of business is to review our regular meeting minutes from our June 16th, meeting. Are there any amendments or revisions from the board? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the Town of Exeter Select Board regular meeting minutes of June 16th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we don't have any appointments or resignations this evening, so we can step right into our discussion items. First item this evening is an update on the Park Street Bridge. We have two individuals from New Hampshire DOT as well as Public Works Director Steve Cronin back. And I'm glad to see some folks from the neighborhood also here. What I'd like to do is have Director Cronin and DOT give their update, and then certainly we would be happy to take any questions or comments from the public after that. So with that, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve Cronin, Public Works Director. I have Julie Avenant from New Hampshire DOT here with me tonight. On June 2nd, we provided you with a brief update on the Park Street Bridge. At that meeting, we notified you that town staff would be meeting with New Hampshire DOT on June 11th to get some answers to your questions. We provided a memo in your packet that has some of those answers, but during that meeting, we felt that it was probably necessary at this point to have New Hampshire DOT come and update the board on what's happening on their end as far as what they see for the future of the bridge and what role the town is going to play in that. So I'll turn that over to Julie. She can give you a little bit of background on some of the conversations that they've had with CSX as well. And take it from there, Julie.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Hi, I'm Julie Avenant. I'm with the Bureau of Planning and Community Assistance, and I'm one of the project managers for local public agency, LPA Projects. And I also work with coordinating the municipal bridge program as far as managing funding for municipal bridge projects and managing coordination with towns when there's deficiencies or structures that need to be discussed. I have a little bit of history, and I actually brought some of the backup documents that I'm going to discuss. I know most of you have probably seen these, but I just brought some copies in case, so I don't know if there's enough for everybody. But I'm going to very briefly touch on the history, our understanding of it from DOT's side, because when it comes to railroad bridges, there can be some confusion about documentation. So the inspection reports on the bridge all show railroad ownership up through 1999, and that was consistent. It was a railroad-owned structure. And then there were two MOUs executed in 2001, two memorandum of understandings. The first was on October 2nd, 2001. That was between the state and B&M Railroad. And in that MOU, the maintenance responsibility for 12 railroad bridges was transferred to the state, but not ownership. So the state took maintenance. And then at the end of October, there was an MOU between the state and the town where The bridge ownership in that MOU was meant to have been transferred from the railroad to the town, but we cannot find any documentation of that, and we've discussed that with Steve, and it doesn't sound like the town has that either. So the railroad did change ownership, as the previous speaker addressed. It was B&M, then it became Pan Am, then that was purchased by CSX in 2022. So if that transfer occurred, it could have been lost, but emails and correspondence we have with CSX, they acknowledge that they own this bridge. So when we sent out the closure memo in March of this year, it was referenced as a state-owned bridge, and I just want to explain that discrepancy. In the bridge inspector's database, there's one field, and over the years, because the state was maintaining the bridge, they wrote state in that field. They didn't have separate fields for owner and maintainer, because that's an unusual situation. So the nuances of those MOUs was lost over those 20 years, and it was referred to as a state-owned bridge. So this took a deeper dive on our part to kind of uncover the ambiguity as far as ownership. We believe, because we can't find record of a transfer, that it is a railroad-owned bridge with state maintenance. So I just wanted to provide that clarification. Is there any question on that before I move forward on the current?
No, I'll hold off. That just seems a little odd that it, now all of a sudden it's owned by the railroad?
Yeah, so a bit of a surprise to us as well. There was a town meeting action, I believe, back in 2001, where, the town voted to execute the memorandum of understanding. The deed was never transferred, at least from what we can tell. So even though there was the intent on behalf of the town to take ownership of the bridge, somehow fell through the cracks. We, through our deed research, have not been able to locate that deed at the registry showing the town as owners. So, again, even though the MOU states that, there was an intent to transfer it to the town, legally it doesn't appear that that has happened. So we've been operating under the assumption that the state has owned the bridge. Their research is telling them that CSX may own the bridge. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, at least as far as ownership goes.
Yeah, something seems odd. Okay,
Yeah,
keep going.
Okay. So that takes us to spring of 2025, when the closure memo was issued. This bridge is what's known as a non-redundant steel tension member structure, and that's more commonly known as fracture critical. And that just means that some of the supporting elements don't have any redundancy. If one of them fails, then the whole bridge is at risk of collapse. So due to some high-profile incidents across the country, the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, has initiated additional inspection requirements for fracture-critical bridges. So it was during one of these inspections in February of '25 on this bridge that 3 cracked tension members were found, 3 locations. One was at a gusset plate and 2 were at supporting angles for the floor beams underneath the wooden deck. So at that point, immediate closure of the bridge was requested, and the town assisted with carrying that out. So that brings us to the more current conversation about options for rehabilitation or removal. The town reached out asking our Bureau of Bridge Design if rehabilitation was an option, and our chief bridge inspector said that due to the type of structure and the type of cracking that was found, it is not a candidate for rehabilitation. Even if the current cracked plates were replaced, others could crack along similar locations, because there are many of these connecting angle and gusset plates on the bridge. So at this time, CSX Railroad did reach out to DOT, and they requested to remove the bridge, and they offered to pay for that removal due to the significant safety hazard that it presents for their operations. DOT's leadership discussed this and thought that sounded like a good option. CSX requested DOT's assistance with the environmental documentation and permitting, as the bridge is a historic resource. So DOT's Bureau of Environment will carry out that process using a consultant before the bridge may be removed. And DOT has committed to funding the environmental documentation and historic mitigation components of the project. So both for the environmental documentation and for the removal, it's not anticipated that the town would need to provide funding for those pieces. Some examples of historical mitigation that have been done for removal of similar structures is storyboards or interpretive panels. Some towns place these in a public park or maybe in a library. Some towns have chosen to display pieces of bridges that have been removed in a park. So that's something that the consultant may come and speak to the town about and request input on. So I just wanted to put that out there now for an idea. So DOT is going to continue to coordinate with the town and CSX regarding the water line that's currently located on the bridge. And DOT Bureau of Bridge Design is asking if the town could participate in funding for removal of that water line, which is my understanding it would need to be capped at the two ends and then removed. So that's a question for the town that the town can consider. Again, we don't need an answer tonight. This is going to be a process, and we anticipate that there will be more conversations with the town. So I checked in this afternoon with our Bureau of Bridge Design on their anticipated timeline. The environmental documentation and historical mitigation process will take at least 6 months, so through fall and winter of 25, 26. And then CSX may be ready to begin bridge removal in the spring or summer of 26. So we're anticipating about a 1-year timeline. So as far as replacement options moving forward, part of that original MOU was that DOT was going to continue maintaining the bridge for 10 years or until it had been rehabilitated or replaced through a local public agency project. And that's why I'm here from Community Assistance, because there was, for all those years, an LPA project on the books, but every time that DOT coordinated with the town, it didn't sound like the town was interested or ready in moving forward with that project. So I know our municipal highway engineer, CR, talked to the town in 2022, and that was their understanding at that time, that the town didn't support a replacement project due to the 2 alternative at-grade crossings within approximately half a mile. So that was DOT's understanding, is that up until relatively recently, the town had not been interested in replacing the bridge. So if that has changed, we are very willing to work with the town on an LPA project for replacement. In the MOU, we had agreed to 90%, 10%, that the 90% would be federal and state funding and 10% would be town. There are some considerations, though, as far as replacing this bridge. The most significant is the vertical clearance. The modern standards for railroad bridges require 23 feet, and that, I've heard different estimates, but it's about 3 to 6 feet that the roadway would need to be raised from where it currently is in order for that vertical profile or the sort of roadway curve over the bridge to work. And due to there's already a vertical crest, and due to the constraints of the roadway approaches to the bridge, it would be a challenge to raise the roadway 3 to 6 feet at that location. So that's definitely something that would need to be considered in the conversation about replacement. The town asked about a pedestrian bridge only option, and that is definitely another option. Our funding sources for state and federal funds are more geared toward vehicular bridges. We do have 2 funding sources. One is called TAP, that's the Transportation Alternatives Program, and one is CMAQ, which is Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality. And those programs can fund pedestrian or non-motorized uses. Those are competitive programs where the towns submit applications, and those are ranked and scored. And with CMAQ, they need to show a reduction in carbon. So those are some options. We're very willing to continue to talk to the town about replacement options if the town is interested in moving forward with that. We also touched base with DOT's Bureau of Right-of-Way regarding the town roadway. And he indicated that it's an unusual situation where the town's roadway actually came before the rail crossing right-of-way, and that most rail crossing right-of-ways in this part of the country aren't like that. So he indicated that if the town is not interested in replacing the bridge, the town could choose to discontinue or extinguish that piece of roadway right-of-way there. But that will all be part of the bigger conversation about the future of a bridge at that crossing, so. That is what I have for updates. I'm very willing to take questions. If I can't answer them right now, I will be very happy to find the information and get back to you. So,
Mr. Chair, you use the acronym LPA. Can you tell me what that means?
yes, it means local public agency.
Okay.
So those are the projects we administer where there's state or federal funding for town-sponsored
Thank you.
projects. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cronin, but discontinuing any part of the roadway would take a vote at town meeting, and that would take place in March. So would that affect that timeline that you gave us?
No, I don't believe that that would affect the timeline for the bridge removal. CSX seemingly is the owner of the bridge and is working with DOT to go forward on the removal. So the discontinuance of the right-of-way isn't required in order to remove the bridge, but it would be highly recommended if the bridge has been removed that the town discontinue the right-of-way.
I see. So you can do that regardless.
Yes.
Question. Thank you. I'm curious, Mr. Cronin, if you can talk to us about the infrastructure underneath for the water and what it's going to take to send it around.
Yep, so as part of the Rose Farm project, the developer was required to increase fire flow capacity and redundancy in that neighborhood. They replaced the water main on Summer Street last fall, increasing the size from a 6-inch to an 8-inch to effectively do that, so that's already in operation. We have water main crossings on either side at Main Street and at Salem Street, so we have redundancy in the system. Based on our hydraulic modeling and testing, we believe with that increase, the fire flow is now sufficient. So from a redundancy standpoint, we don't see an issue with removing the water main. Obviously, funding is an issue for us. We don't have a project plan to remove it. We would want to speak with our consultants about how we would terminate the main on either side if we were going to go that route, whether we would need hydrants, looking at water quality, all those things. So I think we'd have some work to do on our end before we could give you an answer as to overall impacts, but at least from a redundancy standpoint, we're not concerned.
And we really don't have any sense of what that will cost.
I don't offhand right now. I'm cautious to even throw a number at it.
Yeah.
The issue I think we have is that right now we are there, and I guess you could say if they do own it, we are trespassing. So that's a concern we have on our end, and I think something that we need to research. We can't find any written agreements. We know that we've maintained it, we've replaced that main, but that's an issue that I think could arise if we started to contest ownership. So.
Any questions before we?
Not at this time.
The funding that you spoke of, both federal and state,
Yeah.
in the current climate, is that funding still available?
We have not had any changes to our federal or state local public agency funding at this time, no.
Okay.
It's a constrained program, and I will say it's fully programmed through the current 10-year plan out to 2036, so it's
Okay.
not that we have excess funding necessarily at the ready, but we have not had any changes to reimbursements coming through on federal funding.
Okay.
How long would the town have to decide on replacement? So you're effectively telling us that the bridge has to come down sooner rather than later.
Right.
Does replacement have to happen immediately? Can we maintain the existing right-of-way and fund it at a later date and still have that option under the MOU? Or does it all have to happen together?
Yeah, it doesn't have to happen together. It could be a longer conversation about the finances for a replacement project. And then if that were the case, then you wouldn't discontinue the right-of-way. You would keep it open with appropriate safety barriers. It would just be a right-of-way in theory on paper, but not, you would lose your connectivity for a while, so.
If the town chose not to fund removal of the water main, where does that put CSX and New Hampshire DOT?
I think that CSX and DOT would need to discuss that, but right now it's a request to the town. So, yeah.
So it sounds like they can come in and do that in the spring, summer of '26 regardless.
If the
That's kinda changed
environmental
since our last meeting.
documentation is completed. They can't remove a historic resource without that documentation completed, so. They're requesting DOT's assistance with that piece.
If that were to happen, who ultimately ends up responsible for terminating the road and putting up barriers or traffic control, anything like that?
You mean if the bridge is removed?
So, yes, so say CSX were to just decide, okay, we've chosen a date, we're gonna come in and remove the bridge. Obviously, we can't just leave,
Right.
An open area there. There needs to be some safety involved, and, I mean, how would that process work? Would DOT require them to do certain things before giving them approval, even though it may not be required from them?
Yeah, we can have that discussion with CSX and the town, but it is a town right-of-way. So I believe it would ultimately be up to the town to secure it, but we could involve CSX in that conversation. Especially if there's questions as to timing and what the town would need to do to prepare for that.
I'd like to take some questions from the public. If anyone has any questions, and step up to the podium. And if you would just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Jackie Raquel. I live at 31 Park Street. So my question, and I raised this before, what does taking the bridge out mean? Are you going to take the deck off and leave the two embankments there? Or are you going to regrade it? Because that hill wasn't there before, so it had to have been built in order to put the bridge in. Are you going to regrade it and put a crossing in with gates, the whole thing? So then there's no right-of-way problem. We've got a road still, and Park Street is all connected.
Can you speak to that, or?
I think from what I'm hearing from DOT is that responsibility would ultimately fall on the town. So,
A heck of a lot safer than leaving two
yeah,
cars.
I can say that would be very challenging with the grades that are there, and it would take a lot of work with abutters to make that happen. Order of magnitude as far as cost goes, I can't even begin to imagine. We would have to do a lot of work on our end to figure that out. So,
CSX also.
yeah, that would include lowering maybe some other utilities as well that we'd have to look at. Yeah.
Well, I think moving forward, we're going to have to look at all of these options, right? Not rule anything out, but,
Yeah.
because I know you have your timeline and CSX has their timeline, but, we owe it to our citizens to hold public hearings and public meetings and get the input from the community as to what, they'd
Yep,
like us to look into.
absolutely.
And Mr. Cronin will be tasked with, coming up with the different options, what it would take, what's possible, what's impossible, what could be possible, cost and all of that. So it will be a lot of work, but we have to do that work.
Yep.
Mr. Chartrand.
And as an SB2 town, we're going to move the slowest of any entity, right? Because we make decisions one time a year, every March. So we
Yep.
need some respect for our process and our form
Absolutely.
of government from both DOT and CSX. It's a very full participatory form of government, and it moves very slowly. So that needs to be reckoned with and respected. Thank you.
Hello, Cliff Sennett, 84 Park Street. My question is, you mentioned that there would be an environmental study prior to removal, a historic preservation study.
Yep.
Is there also, or would you consider adding, some sort of a study that would analyze the traffic impact of not having the bridge there anymore? Certainly, it has changed the pattern as it's been closed, especially on Salem Street, Oak Street. That's a major connector between 101 and Newfields Road for people heading west through town, cutting out the downtown, going through Park Street, across Winter Street to 111. That's a big movement, and I would think we would want to know how some of those changes, if they're going to become permanent, would be dealt with. Also, safety response times, too. So I hope that's part of it.
We agree.
Tim Miles, 2 Dewey Street. I just want to point out also, with the traffic, it's now forcing everybody to, like, if you're coming up that direction and not going over Park Street, you're now coming out at the old Exeter Flower Shop, which is right at Main Street School. It's that new construction site where they tore the garage down. And if you're, like, that traffic is always backed up because all the parents park along the road. It's like one lane twice a day. And not being able to go over that bridge is forcing everybody to that corner. And that's it's already kind of a nightmare, but.
I understand that. Thank you. Sam.
Sally Ward, 72 Park Street. I have some questions and some concerns. Let me just say at the outset that I am not in favor of removal of the bridge. I think that would be have a very negative impact on the neighborhood and the town for a variety of reasons. One of them is traffic, but also safety. And it is a historical part of Park Street. And I live on one side of Park Street. My joke is I live on the other side of the tracks. Took the bridge out, I'd really live on the other side of the tracks. And it's not just an inconvenience. It's just changing the character of the neighborhood and the town. And the first part of the presentation from the Department of Transportation, which I appreciate, I was concerned because it sounded to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded to me like CSX has already made a decision. So are we in the position now of having to push back that decision? Am I misinterpreting what you said? And I think there are many variables on their part. There are many variables on the Department of Transportation part. And I just want the town variables to be in the mix. And I know that we'll have hearings, et cetera, but I'm deeply distressed at the potential removal of the bridge for the variety of the reasons we've talked about.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mark Furlong from 24th Street. I live on the neighborhood served by Park Street Bridge, for those who don't know where that is. I'm definitely opposed to removing the bridge. I think it is an important part of our neighborhood. I've only lived in the neighborhood for 15 months, but I've been using that bridge for 30 years. It serves the whole west side of Exeter, including the adjacent towns, which is where I was traveling to daily. And sometimes you can't get through downtown when there are events going on or just when there's traffic. The other thing is having a bridge as opposed to grade crossings is a great advantage if there were to be an incident on the tracks, a derailment or a broken down train. As the earlier gentleman spoke, the trains are definitely increasing in frequency, increasing in length. We all got a preview of what that would be like during the track work when the Salem Street crossing and Main Street crossing were closed at the same time, and the Park Street Bridge was closed. The only access was Front Street. Trying to get out of town at 8 o'clock in the morning, the first day that was all closed, was about impossible. The other thing I looked at was the bridge inspection report. The last regular inspection was in May of last year. And there was an interesting note on there that the bridge is eligible for placement on the National Historic Register. And I don't know if that's ever been pursued, or I know that's a lengthy process. It might be too late for that to happen.
That would be.
Could you speak to that, please?
I don't know if it's been placed on the register, but that would all be investigated during the historical mitigation environmental document. They would research that.
Yeah. And then my final question is, was CSX invited to the meeting tonight? Because I think that we would certainly like to hear from them as well.
We will have CSX at a future meeting.
It's a little bit of an experiment in civic democracy, me coming up to speak here. One of my questions was actually.
Devin, can you just state your name and address?
Oh yeah,
for the
sure.
record?
Yeah,
Thanks.
Devin Scarrett, live here in Exeter. I'm curious if the investigations that might take place would involve not only the traffic patterns, but also kind of what are the other ways in which the town and people have used the street. So I'd be curious in how to engage the public and what are the various repercussions. And then this is my daughter Dana, who has gone to school at the Harris Street, the Harris Center, Child Development Center, and then also at Main Street School. And she told me some stuff about how she remembers having used the bridge. So I wanted to let her speak.
I remember that we use that bridge a lot we go on these little fun walking field trips, and when we were younger, our legs got tired really easily, and it was a shortcut to get to the Main Street playground, and we went there like twice a month maybe, and it was very helpful for a shortcut.
Thank you, Dana.
Thanks.
Thanks, Devin. Any other questions or comment from the public before we bring it back to the board?
Nicholas Metz, 1 Tilton Ave, here in town. I didn't plan on speaking on this, but I understand, CSX owning the bridge to take it down. Is there an option for private funding a rehab of the bridge if interest were to be brought, or is that something that could be proposed to CSX and the state moving forward if we got enough interest for that?
So based on this being a fracture-critical bridge, it's not a candidate for rehabilitation. The reason that CSX wants to take it down is it's been deemed unsafe both for vehicles and pedestrians, and it poses a hazard to their operations. So I don't believe that rehab is appropriate for fracture-critical.
From a cost benefit, I could understand that, but I mean, if every gusset and every bolt of the bridge is replaced in kind, or to a certain degree, I mean, again, it might not be the most financially responsible effort, but potentially it could be.
Then the challenge is the vertical clearance requirement has been raised to 23 feet. And so the bridge at its current height doesn't meet the modern standards for railroad bridge clearance.
From a replacement standpoint, but as a rehab, again, it would be something to look at, see if
I'm not sure that anybody would be willing to fund rehabilitation of a fracture-critical bridge that doesn't meet vertical clearance requirements.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nicholas. Any other questions or comments from the public? Sally, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, Sally Ward, 72 Park Street. I forgot 2 things when I was speaking before. The first has to do with this question of the standard, the vertical height standard. And I understand that that is a standard that's out there, 23 feet. But my question is, what are the potentials for waivers of that standard? I don't know the answer to that, but that's something to consider. And the other thing is this issue about the memorandum of understanding and something falling through the cracks. Is there any potential for doing some additional research on that to figure out how did that fall through the cracks, and is there any potential for bringing it back into the current context?
Thank you. So I'll answer the second question. I think we would exhaust all efforts to get to the bottom of that, and then can either of you speak to Sally's first question.
Yes, I
Thank
can
you.
speak to that. So the NHDOT Bridge Design Manual has 22 feet 6 inches as our vertical clearance requirement. The 23 feet comes from AREMA, that's the American Railway Engineering and Maintenance of Way Association. And AREMA standards apply for Class 1 railways such as CSX. So that might be a question for CSX about waiving that standard, but that would be,
Okay.
that would be waiving a national AREMA standard. DOT standard is 6 inches lower.
So one of the things that we've heard is that CSX has an interest in being able to pass double-stack trains along the entire corridor.
Correct.
If it were 23 feet, would that be able to accommodate that?
Yes, 23 feet is the standard for double-stack trains, and you're exactly right. That is why that has come into existence.
Are there any other bridges along this corridor that are less than 23 feet?
There probably are. I can come back with that information. I don't have.
Good question.
Yeah,
Good question.
yeah.
So can I jump in there on that line, sort of? You mentioned that the railroad said that their bridge is a hazard to their operations. I'm not asking you to elaborate on that, but I would be interested to hear the railroad company elaborate on what that hazard is.
Okay.
How often are these inspected?
Red list bridges are inspected twice a year if they are state-owned. Because of the state maintenance, as I explained in our inspection database, this bridge was listed as state-owned. So this bridge is inspected twice a year.
And it was only recently that it was found to be unsafe?
Yeah, it was in February of '25 that the critical deficiencies were noted. That led to the
So, as we
closure.
mentioned at the last meeting, a hole had developed
Yeah.
sometime over the winter, and that's when we
Okay.
reached out to DOT. So none of the prior inspection reports found any deficiencies. Whether or not they were there, I don't know, seems a little coincidental, but
Right, do we have the most recent one before we reported the whole?
we have it in our files. I'm sure.
We do? Okay, can we add that to a future packet at some point, please?
Any other questions from the board?
I do have one. So your packet that you handed out, I'm just wondering where, it's the 1, 2, 3, 5th page in. It says railroad-owned highway bridges. I'm not sure who produced this document.
So this was the attachment to the MOU, the page before it, that was dated October 2, 2001.
Okay, so it's part of the,
Correct. So if you look at the second paragraph, it says, "The bridges in question are the 12 bridges described in Exhibit A attached
Okay.
here to," and this is,
thank you. It's just you
No
getting
problem.
this
No problem.
while I'm trying to read it. And then the last page, so that says railroad-owned highway bridges, but the last page from March 18th, 2025 says it's a state-owned bridge. So I'm a little confused on who owns this bridge.
We all are.
Okay, thank you. I'm very confused on who
so
owns
I
this bridge.
apologize if I didn't do a good job of describing how it came to be listed by the inspectors as state-owned. The MOUs were in 2001, and then in that time, they would have populated a database with ownership information. DOT, through these MOUs, was and is maintaining the bridge. So DOT came to be listed in that field in the inspection software because they were maintaining the bridge. There were not two fields for owner and maintainer. And that's where this gray area of ownership came about. The years went by and these MOUs sort of faded from memory.
And you did well when you explained it earlier. I just wanted to hear it one more time for the public.
So-
Because there is still discrepancy between the intent
Absolutely.
of the vote.
Absolutely.
And just because a piece of paper wasn't
I
done.
completely
So,
agree.
not on you, but
we dug through our
stuff we have
files. I tried to pull up
vet
for you the best
through.
we could find. And then we
Yeah.
also took these to the head of our Bureau of Right-of-Way, who's a very good title deed researcher, and we requested his assistance for any proof that the bridge transferred ownership, and he was unable to find any, so.
Has CSX been able to produce anything showing that they have a deed or ownership?
I haven't asked them, but we can reach out to them
Yeah.
for that. It's a very good question.
Okay.
Steve, do you have, do we have your contact information?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Because to Selectwoman Belanger's point, like, I can't read this right now, so I'm going to want to go through it.
Absolutely,
And
I
if
did
I have
make
questions, we can,
copies of my card.
that would be great. Thank you very much. Thanks.
But yes, I'm very happy to follow up, do more research.
Appreciate that.
This will be a process that we'll work with the town on. So.
Any other questions?
I just want to reemphasize that our timeline may not match up with CSX's, and there needs to be accommodation for that. I really want to put a marker down on that. Our form of government is very, very slow-moving and tricky, and we're going to need accommodation for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sally. Very distressing information. I think, we have a lot of concerns, again, regarding safety and how things would be left. I think we feel a little bit helpless right now jurisdictionally over how we're going to make those things happen. But as you said, that's on us to figure that out, and we're going to do that.
Yeah, I literally am feeling a little bit railroaded right now.
Dad joke.
And this is exactly why that phrase came to be.
That's right.
Because the railroad often moves with little regard for local, and so it's disappointing. And again, we're going to need them to accommodate us as we work our way through this, because it ain't going to be fast.
Well, it's not going to be fast, but I also am really concerned about the lack of immediate services for our residents. There's that piece too that is really concerning. And while traffic is annoying, I'm not that's not the thing that keeps me up at night. It's like,
It's a safety.
you're right, it's the safety piece. Like, can an emergency vehicle get to where it needs to get quickly?
It would have to go to one-on-one, and that's a long way around.
Right, that is a very long way around, and those things and for the long-term sustainability of our town, the traffic is, of course, a huge concern, but the piece that is like, how does this happen, is the emergency response ability.
Yeah, so I don't want to put the chief on the spot, but he is here tonight, so I'm sure that, some of these conversations have happened regarding the new station and response time. I know that's a much longer term discussion, but, it may play into this, so I don't know if you'd like to speak to that a little bit, chief.
I'd love to. Obviously, part of the reason why we have a second fire station was to put us in a position where we could respond from both sides of the tracks if there was ever an issue out there. However, I'm not going to speak for the police department. They have vehicles that regularly go over that bridge. Our ambulance, weight limit-wise, will go over that bridge, but our fire apparatus is too heavy to go over it anyway. But the ambulances do. And I don't want to speak for the police department because obviously for them, that would be, they have a regular passenger vehicle. It's not a big deal. I do want to throw out that our emergency management director had also made the comment that our concern really is about a train derailing. And people familiar with the history know that it actually wasn't, well, that was a few decades ago, I guess, but when that train derailed, it was a pretty big deal. It's the second one we've had in town, and it cuts the town in half. So thankfully, with the second fire station, hopefully in the next year coming online, we're going to have an ambulance and fire apparatus on the other side that will give our people a little time to actually go down 101 in that case, because you're right, the only way to get over there if those crossings are all blocked is to get on 101, and that definitely takes time. But emergency response wise in the fire department today wouldn't be affected because we don't use it, but the police department does, and I think it's valid for them to have a voice in that as well.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, I would imagine the police department would have to make sure they have coverage on both sides of the track if there's no bridge.
Right.
And that layers in cost that we may not currently have. So.
That's a good point as well.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming here and sharing your concerns. It's really helpful to hear.
I have one thing. Just for those of you that heard about the historic mitigation aspect of removal, we've done this before when the Great Dam was taken down, and there is an archaeological survey, there is a historical survey as far back as we can go, which at this point is about 1802, as far as maps are concerned. Excuse me, this area of town was actually laid out much earlier than it was populated. It's one of the first things that you see on the map, on that first 1802 map, that there's the streets, but there's no buildings on it. And Park Street was also a main thoroughfare for the logging business, the timber business, coming up from the forest off Epping Road and Brentwood Road and straight down, by the Park Street Common and shoot to the water. So there is a lot of, some of the grade changes that have occurred after, because the train came through, not because that's the way it naturally was. But nonetheless, it's there. It's there now. So these are the kind of things that you would hear in a historical survey. And when we talk about mitigation, if the bridge is removed, then we need to make up for it in some way. And so what happens is the survey is done by the Department of Historical Resources or the State Historic Preservation Office. They contact our Heritage Commission and ask for input and what would you like to do. For the dam, we asked for 4 or 5 things and we got them all. One was the blue sign that's at the Great Bridge now. One is the glass-etched view of the dam as it was before it was taken down. That's placed in the library in the corner. One was documenting its history and then actual removal as it went through, and keeping that documentation all together and available at the library. And I know there's more. I've forgotten what it is, but we had a good list of things, and we were expecting maybe 3 of them to be approved, and all of them were approved by the state. And we didn't have to pay for them; they were done by the state. So what I'd like you folks to do, who live in the neighborhood, is start thinking about what kind of thing you'd like to see. Interpretive panels are also an option. We didn't do. I don't remember why we chose not to do that. But if you have any ideas of how to commemorate the existence of the bridge and your experience with it, and maybe your grandfolks' experience with it, start thinking about that now, because the question will come up in 6 months or more.
That's great input.
Yeah. Because, we have to come to the Heritage Commission and give us your opinion. We meet every third Wednesday at 10 a.m. So I just want to ask you to be thinking about what you would like to see, and maybe we'll find some commonality between the responses we get, and we can talk about that, going further.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions.
Can we just have your name and address for the record?
Yes, Kathleen Garofano, and I live on West Side Drive.
Thank you.
And I've lived in Exeter for 5 years. I do work at the hospital, and I feel that since we've gotten rid of the paramedics, that it's important to have a road for the ambulances to get around and not have to wait for the train. So there's that. I just wanted to state that.
Thank you.
But are we not discussing 71 West Side Drive tonight? Is that not on the agenda?
We've got some DPW project updates later in the agenda.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll wait. I just didn't see it, so
That's okay.
I wasn't sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else on the bridge before we? So next steps. I know we have your timeline and CSX's timeline, but let's look at our timeline. And in the short term, let's continue to investigate the ownership issue. And I appreciate your help from your end in reaching out to CSX. I'd like to have CSX come to a future select board meeting this summer. And, after you and your team, Director Cronin, do your due diligence on the different options and starting to look at costs, I'd like you to work with the assistant town manager and me as a team. And when we're ready to come back to update the public, we will have that on the agenda. And I know how to reach the neighborhood to give you a heads up. And certainly, in the meantime, if anybody has any questions or concerns or comments, please feel free to reach out to us, because this is going to be a very public process. So, anything else from the board? No. Okay. Thank you all for coming this evening. And we've got a great presentation coming up if you'd like to stick around and hear about the park that we inherited a few years ago. So.
That's one way to.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
So I'd like to introduce the chair of the Pairpoint Park Advisory Committee, Steve Jones, who's got members of the committee here as well.
Are you guys okay to share a mic there? You've got
We're good.
2 to 3.
We're all good.
2 to 3 ratio.
Very cooperative.
Okay.
Yes.
You are. I've watched your meeting.
It's a pleasure and an honor to present to you this evening. Is it possible to see our presentation on the screen?
Hello, Will.
Just give Will a minute. He should be able to
Give Will a
bring
minute.
that up.
Okay.
Maybe you could introduce your...
Yes. My name is Steve Jones. I'm the chair of the Pairpoint Park Stakeholder Advisory Committee, and I am ably, in no order, assisted by
Amanda Kelly and Jen Martell.
It's in the
We
packet.
submitted the packet.
It's in the packet. You want me
Do you have,
like someone displays it?
On a thumb drive or something.
let me
I can-
send
I
you
can
the
very
packet.
quickly.
Amanda, do you want to forward, do you have it? You can forward it to me and I'll forward it to Will.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
Yep.
I can see it.
You can see it?
I have it in my packet.
Okay,
It's just for
well,
the public. So he'll get it up.
Okay.
There. We'll get it there.
We can get started right away, so you don't have to wait. Tonight, we will review and present our work to date over the last year, and each aspect of our committee charge. For your reference, we have a slide with the committee charge, and I believe it's in your handout, and that also references by slide each charge. So item number 1, slides 3 through 6. Item number 2, slides 7
Why don't
through
you
9.
read those for the
Yeah.
room? Just read the charge for the room.
Oh, and for the room, the charge is work with the town planner, Parks and Rec director, Recreation Advisory Board representative, Heritage Commission representative, Historic District Commission representative, and Select Board representative, to review the map and specs of the property, including all inspections, and determine all permits that may be required to move forward with the park. That's our first charge. Second charge is to develop a formal public survey. We did 2 surveys for community members to offer public input on park ideas or concepts. Our third charge is to present multiple design concepts and cost options to the select board during public meetings. All proposals shall follow Town of Exeter guidelines, policies, and procedures. And that's part of the main part of tonight's presentation. All right, so you can see that. And then investigate all sources of funding, recommend a project timeline, and then this is the most interesting part from my perspective. I don't believe you actually meant this, to design, plan, and construct a park. We will assist, but I do not intend to be out there with a backhoe.
Come on, Steve.
Okay, yeah, I do have many talents, but that's not one of them. Let's begin. Our first charge, okay, actually, this is...
So that's
correct. To review the site itself, between Cornicello and the Chocolatier between Water Street and the river is a small parcel of land, 1/14 of an acre, with 2 easements, one for the Chocolatier and us, the town, that is, and on the other side of the property, a different easement for Cornicello and the town. There are different widths, of course. There are actually 4 parcels merged together, and bounding it on the riverside is the old fish ladder owned by New Hampshire Fish and Game, but no longer in use. There's a significant slope involved in this piece of property from Water Street down to the river's edge, maybe 6 to 7 feet over 55 feet. Let's go here.
So you're going to just have to tell Will. Will's following along, and he'll go to the next slide because it's a little different than what we.
Wonderful. Yes. So thank you, Will, and or Will say, next slide, please, at the appropriate time. The thing to notice on this slide is what happened in 1990. There are certainly people still associated with town government who were involved when there were 2 structures, as I understand it, that burned to the ground one night, and the next day, DPW was there with, I believe, a front-end loader, and loaded up a dump truck with all the debris that they thought was appropriate. So I understand from talking with Jay Perkins, and moved it off to the Simpson Pit. The remainder was plowed under, land seeded, and it's been unimproved since. So that is the most salient part of the history of the property. The dam was right there. It's, I guess you could southwestern abutment came to that property, and the fish ladder is in outline still there. Since the dam was removed in 2016, it's remained unimproved, and in 2023 in December, I'm sure you all remember, that it was donated to the town. And here we are 18 months later. Next slide, please. We reviewed 2 plats, one from 2011 for one owner and a subsequent owner in 2020. And these were helpful in informing design concepts. Next slide, please. We also reviewed, next slide. We also reviewed phase 1 environmental study that was done by the previous owner. And the short answer is there is solid waste, surprise, surprise, on this site. Metal, wood, plastic, cardboard, associated refuse. It's under the current turf. I don't know that anybody knows exactly what it is, but it's assumed to be solid waste. But there is no need, according to this phase 1 assessment, for a phase 2 assessment. And in addition, there is no need for any permitting associated with the park. Next slide, please.
All right. So that's the history. Getting back to our charge. Charge item number 2 was to survey the public. We started with a single broad qualitative question. What do you want to see in the space? So we literally only asked that question. We put it out through an online survey. We went on election day and hosted a table in person. We passed out paper surveys. We had surveys available at the library. We did person on the street interviews. We did interviews with town staff, abutters, and relevant committees, just asking, what do you want to see? Because we wanted to start with public input before we used any of our own input. In that survey, we ended up with a top 10 list. which you can see on the slide. And we use this data to inform our process and our design process and our architectural program. Our design process as a committee led us to the next slide.
Jen gets the fun part.
So I got to be in charge of actually taking all the wonderful ideas that we got from the community, as well as ideas that we gained through a programming exercise that we did among the committee ourselves to develop 3 concepts for the park. The idea would be that we would develop 3 concepts and then go back out to the community and say, you know, which one do you like best?
Jen, do you mind if I interject?
Yeah.
Intervene? Would you mind stating for the record what your capacity is professionally and why you're so important to this committee?
So I'm a professional landscape architect, so I design parks for a living. Among other things, basically anything that's not inside of a building, we design. So sidewalks, streetscapes, and all of that stuff. So I'm very experienced and trained in grading, drainage, horticulture, retaining walls, etc. So I was able to sort of understand the site. To me, the biggest challenge was the slope. One of the really important things that our committee identified on day one, well, maybe not day one, but one of our first meetings was that whatever we build here needs to be accessible to the entire community. That means going beyond the Americans with Disabilities Act, which offers very clear legal requirements for making sites accessible, but just making things accessible to everyone, regardless of ability or disability. So that was really important to keep in mind. And when you have a site that you want to get people to the river, because that's really what the whole point of this park is you get, you know, you have this amazing view of the river that you really don't get anywhere else, and you have the ability to get kind of down close to the water, which is something that people just naturally have a desire to do. How do we do that in a way that is accessible? So we developed these 3 options. There was the deck, the shady bosque, and the serpentine. I'm not going to go in depth through all the 3 options, but I think all of that information is in your packet and can be delved into a little bit more. But essentially, the deck was kind of like a hard option. Everything stays at one elevation. It's a big structure on the site. The shady bosque is a terraced option, so it has a ramp that kind of goes down to a middle terrace elevation-wise. And then there's the serpentine path, which is basically a long winding path that takes you all the way down to that fish ladder retaining wall.
Next slide, please. So then we did survey number 2. And so we took those 3 concepts and we developed a rather intricate survey to find out quantitatively what do people like best. We also, in that survey, asked about themes and elements that they would like to see in a park. So this survey was online and on paper as well. We again got over 500 responses in just 15 days that this survey was open. And I have the results of this survey in a little bit more detail for you next. So next slide, please. So the first choice votes, you can see that the Shady Bosque was the clear preference, almost 2-to-1, that everyone, that people voted for the Shady Bosque. It was very popular, which was helpful to us. We were really glad that people had a preference.
No ties.
No ties, nothing close.
Next slide, please. On the next 2 slides, what you're going to see is the aggregate ranked voting results for the themes and elements. So for these, because we used ranked choice voting and we had quite a large number of things to vote for, you're going to see, instead of just the straight numbers, you're going to see the aggregate numbers. So the numbers are going to appear to inflate rapidly. It's not that we had more respondents, it's just how it looks when we do this type of analysis. So we can do the next slide. For the theme, there was a winner, but it was not a runaway winner the way we had for the park concept. Luckily, as a committee, we sat down and we decided that the first three, local flora and fauna, history of the river, and environmental protection, are actually very intricately connected and can basically become one theme overall. Next slide, please. And then for elements, obviously people really prefer, or really,
They want to sit.
yeah. Seating for relaxing, seating for tables, and then, you know, everything was interesting, but seating and even the bench swings idea and public art, those were the most preferred options for elements in the park. These are not something that we have decided on yet in any way, shape, or form. We've taken this information from the public survey, and once we get into the actual design process of the park, these will come back to be hashed out in detail. So for right now, we've taken the information, we've capitalized on the public engagement that we had for looking at the three concepts, and then we have this information for the future. So now Jen will, oh, no, still me. Next slide. Yes, thank you. So with it being the clear public preference, it was also the unanimous choice at our meeting, at our committee meeting, to vote for pushing forward the Shady Bosque as our preferred concept. So tonight, Jen is going to focus on the details of the Shady Bosque, and at the end of this presentation, when we have 4 requests for you, one of those requests will be about moving forward with the Shady Bosque as our preferred concept. So take it away, Jen.
Sure, and I'll just,
Next slide,
please. Yeah, and I'll just start by saying, you know, this is just a conceptual plan. This isn't a real design yet. There's a lot of stuff that will have to be worked out in terms of the grading, but, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through what the concept is. So essentially, the Shady Bosque has a few different elements. If you're looking at this plan, Water Street is at the bottom of the page, so I'm going to talk about it as you're walking, like as you're approaching the park, arriving from Water Street. So you'd enter the park kind of in the middle of the parcel, where there would be a low retaining wall, potentially with a entrance sign or something sort of identifying where you are in a sense of place, and perhaps a couple of benches. And then you're quickly brought to number 2 on the plan, which is the sloped walk. So that sloped walk takes a long curvilinear swoop through the site. And the reason for that is because of that ADA accessibility. That walk can't be any steeper than 5% slope, or we need to start adding handrails, and that gets expensive and kind of ugly. So this way we can just sort of have the walk go down at a gentle 5% slope, but it does need to sort of take that long loop. And then you enter area number 3, which is the actual bosque, or which is a grove. I know it's not a word a lot of people use all the time. So essentially this would be an area that would be stabilized stone dust, which is kind of a gravelly texture surface that is ADA accessible. It feels solid when you step on it, but water is allowed to percolate through it. And there would be 3 trees planted in that, and movable tables and chairs under that is sort of the concept. Similar to if you've ever been to Luxembourg Gardens in Paris, that's sort of there's a very famous Shady Bosque there where you've got, you know, people sitting under with tables and chairs, and you can pull up a bunch of chairs, and people play chess out there, and it's a really great place.
I love that.
It's the Luxembourg Gardens of Exeter.
Don't make that the newspaper headline, please.
Just online.
Suck it back in.
And then you get to really, you know, the crescendo moment at the bottom, which is the overlook, which I think is where everyone, you know, will want to go at first, because that's where you get the beautiful views of the river. The overlook is sort of looking reddish on this screen, but it's that funny shaped thing at the bottom near the fish ladder wall. It would have a railing. It would be raised off the ground a little bit, just a couple feet, but it would have a guardrail so that people couldn't fall off. And it would just be a great place to stand and watch the water flow and the amazing wildlife that is attracted to our river. Okay, next slide. These images on the right are just some sort of inspiration photos of entrance signage. We've got Luxembourg Gardens there. We also have, I didn't mention the 6 little rectangles you see under number 4 is the idea that there could be some kind of like porch seating, like a rocking chair. That could be where the bench swing happens, something that just adds a little movement and is like a nice place to sit and enjoy the river. That's not just the tables and chairs. And then the inspiration image, which is the snail shell. Next slide. And these are just some quick renderings, sketches of what this might look like in the future. So the Cornicella building is on the right here, the Chocolatier is on the left, and you're kind of standing in the middle of Water Street. But essentially, you can kind of see how the grade would slope down, and you would be kind of drawn into the site from that initial retaining wall at the beginning, and then the trees will poke up and provide some nice shade in the middle there. Next slide. And this is a visualization of what it would look like from the river or from like the library side of that deck structure, the overlook structure that is happening there. You can kind of see the grade change that we're dealing with by the river there. And that's it. Next slide.
Can I mention 2 things real quick before we go?
Go ahead.
I just want to, can we, oh, you can see in your packet, and if anybody wants to back up on YouTube, they can. 2 things that came up in committee, we just want to mention, those trees are shown at maturity. So that's not shown at planting size, that's shown at mature size. They will not be any bigger than where they are shown to grow to.
Okay, thanks.
And on the 2 sides, there's kind of like, it looks like a white sidewalk. That's the easements.
Okay.
So there'll be some material differentiating that and a way for both of the property owners to continue down their side, if you're wondering what that sidewalk looking thing is.
Great, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So charge number 4, money and collecting money, either via grants or donations. There are many opportunities. We don't know the status of many of them because they involve federal funding or state funding, which may or may not be frozen or eliminated. We don't know. Some things do not look to be eliminated, like the Land and Water Conservation Fund. That's separately and independently funded. So that looks like an opportunity, which may open up the second thing, the Community Development Block Grant, if those are available. The Land and Water Conservation funds can be used as a match toward the block grants. So potentially, there's significant money here, but even without, there are donation opportunities, and that's one thing we will ask in our list of asks. Yeah. Next slide, please.
So, we have 4 separate requests for you tonight, and we realize that they, may be something that you decide on later. First request is regarding the concept and theme. We would be seeking your approval of the Shady Bosque as the concept, as the vision for Pairpoint Park, along with the theme of local flora and fauna, history of the river, and environmental protection. These are in order of kind of what we need to move forward. Our second ask would be, would the select board authorize our committee to work with town officials to pursue grants to design and construct the park according to that approved vision?
Yes.
Okay.
We speak with one voice.
Third, similar question, would the select board authorize our committee to work with town officials to solicit donations to design and construct the park according to the approved vision?
Yes.
And then fourth, while right now there is a need for construction documents to be eligible for many grants, to get accurate budget numbers and to prepare a true project timeline. So therefore, we are also asking if the select board would authorize the creation of a $40,000 CIP budget item to cover outstanding costs of the park design and engineering, with the understanding that our committee will make every attempt to solicit at least $5,000 of the $40,000 to defray this cost before the onset of work. So those are our 4 asks for tonight. If you have questions about these, we would love to hear.
Yes, so before we get to the 4 requests, I'd like to open it up for the board. If they have any questions about your presentation.
Yes, please.
I have
Go
Go ahead.
one. I'm sorry. So the grants, love the idea of grants, but sometimes we need seed money. Has anybody discussed where the seed money would come to? Like matching funds?
No, we have not.
Okay.
Yes,
No,
so
it's fine.
we
can-
understand that some of them require matching funds. And right now, we would be starting with, we're starting our next meeting is to start working on donations. Fundraising is our number 1 goal now that we've done all this work. And so, yes, some grants will require a match and some grants may not, and donations do not. So we want to work on building up that fund, our body of money, through donations and fundraising on our own simultaneously with grant opportunities, and then possibly matching some grants against others if they still exist at the time.
Can I follow up with Russ?
Of course.
Do we have anything in Parks and Rec for matching funds if we needed it?
Not in the
Or-
current budget.
Can I follow up, though?
Please.
Couldn't, if there was a grant opportunity, much like we've done in the past, could that be a warrant article contingent on approval of the grant
It could be.
to get that money?
Mhm.
That's an option.
Yep.
That is an option.
Yeah, which is typical. what we
Yes,
do.
and we assumed that if it came to that, which, our goal is to do as much fundraising as possible, we would come back with a similar ask as we did with item number 4 tonight. But it's not on our radar as of now.
Please.
This is a very different question, shifting away from that. I had a constituent ask if the vision for this park was dog accessible, unlike Swasey Park, which is not.
That's a great question. And this came up on both surveys. There is a vocal fraction of the respondents who want dog accessible parks. We believe that that is a question that is beyond just Pairpoint Park, that it needs to be answered by the town, but it is not for us to answer alone.
So it's been raised as an issue, but there's been no movement towards resolving that question.
There is none right now.
Got it. Thank you.
Would this fall, and I'll look to you, Ms. Roy, would this fall under our other parks? Don't we have a policy on dogs? And how would we go about if the public sentiment was to make it dog-friendly? How do we reconcile that?
Yeah, I think right now, most of our parks are prohibit dogs. One question I have might be for Jen. When I look at this, it looks like a pathway, not sure if it's pavers or whatnot, and then stone dust. None of that, I would believe, there's not an open grass area that I'm seeing right away that would be available for dogs. So in the current plan that I'm seeing, it's not jumping out to me as something for animals.
I would, and this is my very unpopular opinion, I struggle with dogs in the parks because I also think that there's oftentimes on Swasey, for example, families picnic there, and but if we are actually including tables and it's not meant to, you're not meant to have a picnic blanket or have your kids crawling around on the grass or what, yes, you can't have an off-leashed dog park. I don't think but I do, if dogs were leashed and the intention wasn't for people to be, toes in the grass, babies crawling around. I don't know.
Yeah. If I could jump back in.
Of course.
I understand that is our park policy, and it's a good policy. I think we might want to take a look at making this an exception. There are so many people that walk their dogs downtown, and this would be a natural resting place for them and their dog. So it might behoove us to take a look at this being an exception to our park policy. I think it would be popular. There are obviously going to be people that say, no, absolutely not. But the downtown is a mecca for dog walkers, and it's something we should consider carefully.
If I may, at the same time that this design concept doesn't show a dedicated area for dogs, it could.
It's a pretty
Jen may
small.
disagree.
That works.
Yeah.
This is a very small urban pocket park.
Yeah.
I
And
think
always near the river.
the idea, like, there's
Yeah.
no grass lawn, there's no
Yeah.
run, there's no enclosure. I think it's, as much as you can bring your dog to that little seating area across the street, I think this would be the same. I don't think it would
Maybe-
be easy to enforce not having them there versus, I
Right.
think.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's
why not?
mostly what I'm thinking, and I would never be I'm not almost ever supportive of anybody being off leash, except in in a designated enclosed dog park where you know what you're signing up for. I don't know, but right, prohibiting dogs from a pocket park or from sitting in a chair. I don't know.
Maybe once we get a little further into the process, we can discuss this, but also maybe talk with Greg about townhouse. If there's a huge push to have more access that is downtown, that is all grass, but there are maintenance issues, not to say we can't overcome them, but I think it would be a good discussion.
Well, I also hope, it is one of those things where we are very dog friendly in that we provide waste receptacles, we do all of this stuff, and people still don't use it. And so it's like, I do not want this to become gross.
It's very small.
The scale of
Again,
this is very
It's very tiny.
a little bit of waste is going to make a big difference. I don't think our committee has any strong opinion one way or another. We look to the town on that. I will say that in doing the public survey, a lot of people did mention wanting a dog park. And I think that is something that I tried to respond to people saying, come to the select board and start that initiative. And I just would say that again to the community, if you want a dog park, the select board is wonderful. Our town government is fantastic. They listen really well. Come, speak, and start creating a dog park. I think it's a great idea. I don't have a dog, but go for it.
We have done that, and we haven't found a place big enough to put one that's not near water. So, doesn't mean we've given up, but just saying we'd be done.
I think understanding the unofficial popular vote, maybe dogs are TBD as we work through.
Sounds like it.
How do we have the discussion? Can it work? How can we make it work? Maybe it doesn't work and we go to an alternative. But we also have to stay consistent with our policies. That doesn't mean they can't be revised, but TBD and conversations.
Sounds good.
Any other questions on the presentation?
I just have one. I think coming to the Historic District Commission sooner rather than later would be a good idea for getting concepts on the street edge and how that integrates with the rest of the street. Meet the third Thursday of every month. So just ask Barb McAvoy to put us on our agenda. And just you don't have to bring this whole thing, you can just bring the drawings that you have and concepts that you've just, gone through and decided on.
I don't have any more questions, but I just want to thank all of you for all the work you've done on this. I've been watching your meetings, and it's been quite a process to watch you all work through. Jen, you just don't like to take credit for your designs, so I'm so glad your chair interrupted you to point that out, because they have been absolutely incredible. And Amanda, all the work you've done too, the gathering of the data, all of you. I'm just going through the list. You're all included in this, but they're the three. They're the face for you right now. Yeah, you all have done the conversations that you've had, the vetting through all the process. Your questionnaire was incredible, especially the second one. Really made me think. So anyway, I just wanted to get that in now before we go any further.
And there is one point I'd like to make off script, but thought well in advance and advised by my spouse.
Thank you.
Yeah, you cannot thank your.
Yes.
Forget to thank your spouses.
Thank you, Kate.
Your spouse.
The response to the two surveys was really remarkable. The second survey, with 570 responses in 2 weeks, start to finish, for a town this size, is a very good response. And the first one, 780 or so, not bad either. There's a lot of interest in this park. That's what I take away from that.
Yep. And Amanda had that questionnaire, the survey, like on social media everywhere before I think it was like already available. But your committee has done an incredible job. You really have. So thank you.
So as the select board rep to the committee, I'd like to say that when the board interviewed all of the candidates were so qualified and were so diverse in their area of expertise and what they could bring that we actually couldn't turn anybody away, and we created 3 alternate positions so that we could invite everybody that had an interest in applying to be on the committee. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dave Short and Judy Rowan and Suzanne Stone, who put in a lot of work before they had to leave for various conflicts. And I know that hopefully they'll be back at some point, but I want to recognize the work not only that the committee currently is doing, but that those members did. And Steve, was there another one? I think it was just those 3, right?
It was just those 3.
Okay, thank you. So the request tonight is to address your 4 questions. We can go through them individually. I guess I'd first like to ask the board members what they think of the recommended concept and theme.
I don't have any problem with any of these 4.
I have no problems with any of the 4 points either.
I think my feedback was incorporated in the survey, and yes, same. I think is great. I think the work that you all have done is really great. I think the work that we can use to model other town surveys from your work is really great. So I thank you for all of the good work that you've done.
Go ahead.
One question that I have, or something I hope we can talk about, is I heard LWCF as a possible funding source. You're going to hear later tonight that Swasey Parkway might be a source for LWCF. And whenever we decide where we're going, it would be great if the committees could not compete against each other, if that's possible, or figure that out, because it just lowers our chance. So I just wanted to say that.
That's a good point.
When you folks are going to be asking for donations, is it for phase 1 of design and engineering, or are you because I know we haven't heard sort of a construction cost, because I'm not quite sure what the order of magnitude or the scale of this.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm just curious what the first part of donations is.
So we're going to ask for donations to design and construct as one pot of money.
Thank you.
That brings up the question, did we establish a fund for this, or is it just all going to go into the general fund, or?
It was going to be a CIP. That's in the motion that we made when we accepted the
Right.
donation of the property.
Okay.
So, Amanda, you just said design and construct. You mean design and engineering?
No, the CIP, the request number 4 is for design and engineering only.
Right.
But our donation request will be to design and construct as a single pot of money and not 2 separate pots. It's too confusing.
Okay, perfect. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we
Yeah,
take
we were careful with the wording on those, so. Sorry.
Mr. Schuster.
Before we take up these motions, we're talking about donations, and we haven't acknowledged the original donation that was made of this land. Could we do that very quickly?
I will ask for you to do that, but I think we certainly have since the day we took this up.
But not tonight.
Let's do it again.
Yeah. So I just want to thank Elliot Berkowitz and Nancy Phillips for donating this plot of extremely valuable land downtown, so that this committee could work to found a park.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I want to do this in 2 parts. I'd like to entertain a motion for the first 3, and then we need to talk about the 4th and the process and how we're going to go about doing that. So this would be slightly different than I think what you're asking for. So I would entertain a motion to authorize. Good night. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to authorize the Pairpoint Park Stakeholders Advisory Committee to move forward with the concept and theme of the Shady Bosque design, and to further authorize the Pairpoint Park Stakeholders Advisory Committee to work with town officials to pursue grants to design and construct the park according to the approved vision, and to further authorize the Pairpoint Park Stakeholders Committee to work with town officials to solicit and accept donations under the Town of Exeter donation policy.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Now, we typically don't move to authorize CIP items because there's a CIP process. And as we talked about last week at Thursday's meeting, my suggestion would be for the committee to work with Mr. Dean and Ms. Roy, as we are right in the middle of CIP, because I won't go through the entire process, but right now they're putting together the CIP, which will be presented to the planning board in August, which will be presented to the select board in draft version in late September, go through the budget process, back to the select board, but now is the time, and that's the way that CIP items are created. So if you could work with Mr. Dean and Ms. Roy.
Yeah, it's typically the planning board that kicks off the process, so not the select board.
Yes, and Amanda, you explained that to the committee very well the other night, the budget process, because Amanda's on our budget recommendation committee also.
Planning committee.
And Jennifer's on our planning board.
Yeah. I'm just the guy in the middle.
Nope, you're the chair. You're definitely not just the guy in the middle.
I'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you again for all of your work over the last year, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you all very much.
And it is a pleasure and enjoyable to be the select board rep to your committee. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you all. We look forward to getting started fundraising.
Yes, you made that point very clear, too. Thank you, all of you, thank you, your whole committee.
See,
Two presentations like that?
You've been retired so long that I was just going to invite Mr. Cronin up for discussion item D.
You hurt me.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You
It's
look
a pleasure to be back. Chairman Papa Constantis and the board. I have been working diligently on the process of emergency management and working with Chief Pizon. It's been quite the pleasure. It has been about a year since my retirement as your fire chief, and it has been a wonderful year. I recommend it to everyone. I come before you, you saw the memo in the packet. What's left of FEMA has requested that we actually formally adopt the Radiological Emergency Response Plan. We've been using the plan or some iteration of the plan now for 30-plus years. The entire 20 that I've been associated with the town, we have reviewed and updated the plan 6 or 7 times, and it has never needed formal adoption.
Okay.
This time, for whatever reason, they felt that formal adoption by the governing body was appropriate. So just so the folks at home know, I just got a couple of quick sentences, bullet points. The Radiological Emergency Response Plan addresses the ability of the town of Exeter, in conjunction with the state of New Hampshire and the Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant, to provide a rapid and integrated response to any emergency at the plant. The plant is local level coordinated and emergency management document for our town to respond to an incident at the power plant. We have a role to play, not necessarily in the plant. The plan describes our response organization, its roles and responsibilities, and its integration into the overall state and federal response. Many of the people seated in the room have seats at the table, the town manager, the fire chief, police chief, public works, health, and on. So we all work together. In a radiological emergency, for the power plant, most of the command and control functions are managed at the state level, and decisions are handed down or guidance is handed down to the local level to implement, such as traffic diversions and whatnot. The plan is an operations-oriented plan providing guidance for our local actions to a unique incident at the plant, and as part of the overall response of all 17 communities that live within the 10-mile Emergency Protective Zone, or EPZ. As evidenced in the memo, I have reviewed the plan. I sent 2 small edits to the state that they've incorporated. It is not a diversion from what we've used in the past. So with little fanfare, so you can move your evening along. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I seek your approval on signing the notice of promulgation so we can adopt the plan.
Any questions for
I do,
Chief Wilkie?
I'm sorry.
Oh, y'all.
What else is new, right? Okay, so I read it, but I didn't really see the role that a select board has, whether it's this board or a future board. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical because it did say law enforcement sensitive, so we wouldn't be seeing anything until something happened, I'm assuming. Should never assume. But, so the town manager is advised of what is happening and steps. So am I correct in saying that then it would be up to the town manager to inform the chair of the select board? That's not in here, so I'm just trying to get a clear
No,
idea.
and there's really nothing secretive about the town's organization.
No, it's in the
Because of the
packet.
form of government that we have, the town manager manages the day-to-day
Yes.
operations of the town. So the town manager, by holding that position, is the leader of that response. Every time we have an
Absolutely.
exercise,
Yeah.
we work hand in hand. Chief Como did his years and I did. Decisions are made collaboratively with the town manager. Every exercise, therefore, every incident that unlikely but could pop, there is a seat at a table for any or all members of the Board of Selectmen. You can be in the room, you can have input in the room, your comments and concerns will be, addressed and evaluated. But for an exercise or an incident, the town manager is the leader of the town of Exeter in this plan.
Yep, and I understood that. What I didn't understand, it's maybe not for this and something that the board itself would have to take up for the future, but we really need to have a plan on how the select board would be advised or kept up to date. So I'm not seeing that at all in here.
Eric, when we go through this exercise, I can speak, and Russ, maybe you can speak to it. I feel like in our binders, right, we talk about some of these things. One of them is to contact the board, is it not?
Yeah, I believe that's part of the
Yeah,
exercise.
so it may not be in this plan, but I would say as a matter of course, when
Town
we're doing
policy.
our practice,
So can
that
we
is one
get
of
a
the contacts.
Follow up on that just to
Sure,
make sure. So
we can double check
Yeah,
that.
I would.
Been part of the Seabrook drill process.
Yeah.
Correct. Either in my, we call it a job aid or a checklist, either in mine as emergency manager director or town manager Dean's record, one of the bullet points of many
Right.
would be notify the board and collaborate.
Absolutely.
But-
I just want to make sure
But
we
obviously out of the
understand and a future board understands that what their role would be. So, okay, let me just check. And then it said something about training on page 38. Do we have a training plan? I know training happens. We tend to not hear about it until it's like happening, and I can't take work off that quickly. So it's on page 38, and it's just local community training matrix. Do we have a training plan in place of how often? Is there a schedule?
No. The state of New Hampshire provides training for us and to us when we change positions, change management. The last time I recall, I look to you because I know we all sat there, it was a solid 5 years ago. I was probably coming in as the new emergency management director at the time, and we had everybody in the room go through it was about a 4-hour exercise
Okay.
on rep training. So after that, it has been targeted on specific individuals, whether the RADAF officer that handles all the dosimetry and equipment, or the town manager myself, the police chief, fire chief for traffic management. So training's been targeted to those people. So training is ongoing. It's offered by the state of New Hampshire, and communities can step up and either do a training, request a training, host a training. on an ongoing basis.
And that's something the state would pay for, or the town?
The state pays, there's no cost to it. I guess the cost that the town would bear for that would be our time.
Okay.
And many of us doing the room were full-time people that would just be, tied up from 9 to noon or whatever, if that was a 3 or 4 hour
Okay.
period, so.
I was going to ask you to elaborate, but I'm on what's left of FEMA. I don't know, so we don't need to.
There are so many moving parts to FEMA,
Okay.
and right now, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is the governing body that manages the power plant. FEMA, of course, is the organization that manages mitigation and response to accidents and incidents. They are still collaborating. The state of Hampshire was the woman, our local liaison, Candy Tibbetts, was working with me all afternoon today, and there is so many unknown issues on who their contact is funding going to continue through the state of New Hampshire, how much funding is going to be borne by the power plant as things change, is just right now we're in a serious, town of Exeter fortunately is not, but above us there is a big unknown, big flux going on.
So thank you for your work. I did get to go to some of those meetings,
Yeah,
so I do
just wanted to add real
appreciate.
quick is that when you mentioned training, the one-on-one training he mentioned we do usually locally in Portsmouth at the office where we do all that stuff. But here, we do run drills that are mandated every 18 months. We do a drill cycle, which technically is training, where we do a planning, a tabletop, and then we all sit in a room together, and we actually run an event like there was actually an emergency at Seabrook Station. And we don't know what that is because the state's online. We use the state resources, everything you spoke about, we activate in those moments. So I just want to make sure we clarify, the training might not be specific one-on-one, but we do a group training that
Okay,
we're
good,
required by
thank
law. Every 18 months, we start that cycle over again. So it is constantly ongoing, and I know the town manager, even myself, has sat in the same room at least for the last 10 years doing that, and we do it pretty regularly. So it comes up, not always every 18 months, but they try to kick it off pretty close, because I believe that's codified in legislation, so they have to.
I'll follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Before we go, is that the training that we get invited to where there's a incident that's been reported, like a leak, and everybody's there from the schools?
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
because I was at one where there was a plume release, and the state shifted it. And the plume started going that way.
We always like it when the wind directions, and we start the day, they give you we have a board that shows you geographically Exeter with different where you are degrees on the map, and we always love it when it's going like the other way.
To the ocean.
It's always a good thing. Yeah. It saves us a lot of.
Sorry, Hampton. Thank you.
Go sit down.
You're not his boss anymore.
Anybody else? Thank you for those
He's
questions.
my boss.
Of course, thank you.
I would entertain a motion to adopt the updated radiological emergency response plan and authorize the select board chair to sign the notice of promulgation.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank
Eric, it's
you.
always good to see
Always
you.
a pleasure to see you next
Thank
year.
you.
No, like,
Director Cronin, please.
Again.
Can I ask a favor? Could you highlight West Side Drive first, because I know we've got some folks here, and for the sake of their time, and thank you.
All right, so we wanted to take this opportunity to provide the board with an update on some of the ongoing projects we have. As you know, we have several projects in various states of design or construction, beginning with West Side Drive. So West Side Drive, we opened construction bids at the board's June 16th meeting. We had 2 bidders for that project, Engrenice and Jamco. The bids are currently being evaluated by Public Works and our consultants. In the interest of full disclosure, we have a small funding gap right now that we're trying to close. We've already identified some opportunities with our consultant and with the contractor to do that, but we are continuing those conversations. We have a meeting scheduled tentatively with our contractor for July 3rd to try to finalize those details. And then we intend on making a recommendation for award at the board's July 14th meeting. Assuming that all works out and we're able to get that contract approved, we still plan on beginning construction activities this year, late summer or early fall. So that's the schedule we're working on right now. I will say the two bids were dramatically different, about $1.5 million between the two. So the vetting process has been ongoing. We also have three different funding sources for this project. We have the general fund, we have clean water SRF, and drinking water SRF. So we have to go through those bids and make sure that all those items fit within the various funding buckets to make sure that we can award a contract and fully pay for and get reimbursed for those items. So that's why there's a little bit of a delay in awarding a contract. We're hopeful that we'd be able to get all that wrapped up by this meeting, but it's taking some time. So I don't want to share exactly what that figure is right now, but as I said, we've identified an opportunity to get it done. We also have the construction administration contract with Underwood, who's our consultant, which would be awarded along with the construction contract. So there's some ongoing negotiation with that as well, but we believe we have a path forward here.
Okay. Are there any questions from the public?
Nicholas Metz, 1 Tilton Ave. I do want to thank Mr. Cronin for all the work that's been put forth going with this, but, you know, patience is wearing very, very thin. We have children going to hospitals that are falling in potholes. We're at DEFCON 1. It's bad. We have calls in, we have requests for the potholes to be filled. It's been a little bit since they've come around, but again, I've you know, encouraged the select board before to come drive through the neighborhood and take a look. You'd all be sad to be there if it was your homes, and it's bad. We got to move on this, and whatever we can do to push it through and as quickly as possible. You know, at least get the pavement ripped up so we can travel the road safely. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Could I comment? Please. I have driven through, I have looked, it is terrible. Unfortunately, we have a form of government issue here, you know, where a lot of our projects that we've estimated are coming in over that amount. So that slows things down, and that's what the director was just talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Trying to negotiate a way forward, given that what the voters approved is not matching up with what the contractor is bidding.
Fair enough. And time has been, you know, a factor of that and things to grow. I mean, I see the red tape that's there, believe me. I do.
And it's intrinsic to our form of government. So
yes,
if you don't like that, then you might want to be in favor of looking at a different form of government.
Fair.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah. To Dan's point, the bidding climate has been very challenging. This project, we actually extended the bid date by 2 weeks. We had a number of contractors who pulled plans for the project. We were very optimistic, held a mandatory pre-construction meeting, and had limited attendance. So we opted to extend the bid date by 2 weeks, reached out directly to contractors again to try to gain interest. Unfortunately, we only got 2 bids. We went through something similar with Linden Street, where we saw a singular bidder on that project, Webster Ave, only 4 bidders. Swasey, which we'll talk about, only 3 proposals. So it is challenging. There's a lot of work on the street.
It's very much the norm and not the exception for this to happen. For our estimate to be nowhere close or struggling to be close to what we're getting for bids. And it's a struggle that we're working on. It does slow projects down, and I apologize to you, Nicholas. I understand the urgency on West Side Drive. I do. I've seen it. I've gone out there and I've looked. And
I've spoken with most of you, and I appreciate all of your time in doing so via email, face to face. I mean, you've answered me all the way through.
Yeah.
But that's all, you know, we as a community said we were gonna come in numbers, and we are here.
Yep.
You know, just in hopes and
Yep.
just, our voices are still there and we're living it.
But it's not just your project, as the director just said. The Linden Street Bridge project has had this issue. You just went through the list. I won't do it again.
The scheme's great. I mean,
I agree. That we agree on.
Nicholas, you and I first met probably 2018, 2019, and this was the first thing we talked about. And I've accepted your invitation several times and driven through the neighborhood. I know people in the neighborhood. I have friends in the neighborhood. It is as you describe it. I want to thank you for two things. I want to thank you for your patience and how professional you have been working with Public Works Director Cronin in particular, your correspondence with me. You and I have met face to face. But just as importantly, if not more importantly, thank you for taking on the role as the leader within your neighborhood and your community to express their questions and concerns very, very thoroughly to Director Cronin. You've established a very good working relationship with him. That's how it should be. And, we appreciate what you're doing for your neighborhood, working with us, and we appreciate you taking the time to communicate with the neighborhood, with what's going on. So we thank you for that.
And speaking of form of government, that is what allows our current form of government to work. Someone like you stepping forward and being involved. So,
Paying attention and coming to talk to us when you can and when we are having this conversation. It's just appreciated. Thank you.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It really is. So I believe you guys have a neighborhood block party coming up in the next few weeks. If you could pass along that information as well, that would be very helpful to us. Thank you.
Any other questions for Steve on this? We'll move on. Go ahead, sir. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Adam Hardenbrook. I live at 2 Blanche Lane in the West Side Drive neighborhood. My question is in regards to the project starting in late summer, early fall. My understanding is that any paving projects, there is a deadline for those need to be completed.
Mm-hmm.
If this doesn't start until late summer, early fall, there's paving still needing to be done by the time that deadline hits. What's going to happen at that point?
So we anticipate that this project is going to be a full construction season, if not more. So even if we break ground this year, we're looking at, trench patch and things like that. We do have bid items within the contract to try to put down a better surface to carry us through a winter season. So that's something that we will be talking with our contractor about. We can't necessarily dictate means and methods, so we don't know until we have this meeting exactly what they're thinking in terms of workflow. So they may opt to do certain things within the right-of-way, outside of the right-of-way. Those are all conversations that we'll have pre-construction. So we'll have a better idea, I think, probably at the time of award, how that's all going to play out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Okay. There are no other questions. I'll let you get back to the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we kicked off our 2025 pavement management season with paving of Drinkwater Road. We started on July 11th with the installation of a leveling course and a binder course, and then following that, we started raising structures in preparation for the final coat. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be resetting granite curb out there so that we have reveal for the sidewalk and to make sure the drainage system works. We've installed the top course of pavement. Actually, since this memo was written, we were out there again today, and we've gotten to Pleasant View Drive at this point. So what we have left is from Pleasant View to High Street. That's the section that has most of the sidewalks, so that work's going to happen over the next few weeks. In addition to that, with the conversations that we had regarding no parking on Drinkwater, we went back and looked at some of the suggestions that were made. We are going to narrow the travel lane width out there. Right now, it varies significantly. We're going to set a consistent width of hopefully 10 feet throughout the entire corridor. That's going to create some additional shoulder for bicycles and pedestrians. I know that the chief of police also had forwarded an email to the board letting them know that he intended to apply for a grant for speed feedback signs for Drinkwater. So I think there'll probably be some supplemental funding that may be needed for that. We also installed turtle crossing signs out there at the designated areas. and we're going to be looking at some additional pavement markings for that. So a few more weeks of work out there. As we were doing that work, a request came in for a section of High Street that had fallen into disrepair this winter. So we actually were out there addressing that today. We put the binder course down, fixed some potholes, and we'll probably top that at the same time we finish Drinkwater Road. So that work should all be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. Linden Street Bridge. At a recent meeting, you awarded a contract to New England Infrastructure. We had a pre-construction meeting with them. Construction activities are going to begin out there on July 7th. So following tonight's meeting, we are going to put out the detour signage and the detour route notices on the town website and on Facebook. Based on the construction schedule, we anticipate the bridge being closed from July 7th to November 20th. So a little bit, 3 to 4 months right now. They are looking at some ways to potentially speed up construction out there, so we'll let the board know if that schedule changes at all. We don't expect there'll be any impact to trash and recycling pickup or local deliveries, but we'll make sure we're in touch with all the abutters so that if they have any issues, we can resolve those for them. Epping Road near-term improvements from Continental Drive to Cronin Road. This is the road widening with pedestrian improvements along the Epping Road corridor. Construction activities resumed on June 23rd and are expected to last through August. First week, you saw them complete the drainage crossings. Now they've established the wide right-of-way to accommodate 2 lanes, and they'll have flaggers out there during work hours to assist with traffic control in those lane shifts. We expect traffic delays throughout the project in the summer. That's why we waited until after the start of school, but it's a very busy road. There's a lot of work to be done out there. We have been in touch with New Hampshire DOT as well about a signalized pedestrian crossing across Continental. There's funding available in the project to do that now. They have approved it. We have gone back to our contractor and requested an amendment for that work. That came about as a result of some of the conversations we had with residents regarding bike lanes and safeties out on Epping, and safety on Epping Road. So. Webster Ave Pump Station and Force Main Replacement. This project was going on swimmingly. We were well ahead of schedule. Unfortunately, we had a change in our project manager out there. The building construction activities are still on schedule. They're nearing completion. Unfortunately, the force main work that was supposed to start mid-April was delayed. Contractor's been hung up on a few other jobs. They've had some difficulty getting a pipe crew in. We had another conversation with our engineers today to try to press them on a start date. So we're actively pushing to try to get them out there. You know, we had anticipated this project at least having the pump station online by the end of June. So now we're looking at a little bit of a delay there. As far as the contract goes, they're still way ahead of schedule, but you know, we'd like to try to keep progress moving. So. Septage receiving, the project is complete at this point, and all the equipment is now operational. We started receiving septage this month, so you'll start to see some additional revenue from that. Front Pine Street Linden intersection project, the roundabout. The final design's nearly complete. Unitil was out there a few weeks ago, relocating utility poles, and the utility companies will be working over the next couple of weeks to relocate their equipment to the new poles. Sewer and drainage repair and rehabilitation will begin late July. We've gone out there, done some of the camera inspection work, talked with our contractors. So that work should be starting soon. Once we have a better idea on the actual road construction of the roundabout, we will be having an abutters meeting to let everybody know. The new groundwater source on Drinkwater Road. Our consultants, Emery and Garrett, submitted the final report to DES on June 2nd. As part of that process, the town of Kensington also had to be notified. They have the right to formally request a public hearing through New Hampshire DES, which they have done. That hearing is scheduled for July 23rd at 6 o'clock at Kensington. I will be there, as well as Steve Dalton, our water superintendent. I know representatives from PEA will be there as well, probably somebody from the town manager's office, but we'll listen to the feedback from Kensington residents. New Hampshire DES will take that into consideration, and then if there are any additional conditions that get added to the project, we'll make sure to let you know.
I'm also going to try to be there as well.
We did have a meeting with our consultant today, Underwood. We plan on having a progress meeting. July 25th is a tentative date for that. Right now, we are still on schedule to bid that project in the fall. We're working with PEA on finalizing the easement for the new well also. Ideally, if we can get that project bid in the fall, we're hoping to break ground before the end of the calendar year. Surface water treatment plant conceptual design. The design activities are ongoing. We are working with AECom as our primary consultant and Underwood as a subcontractor on that project. Also, we have a pilot study consultant that will be doing a treatment technology pilot study in September. So there'll be some equipment out at the existing site at Portsmouth Ave to do a fall-winter pilot study test. We have the School Street area project as well. We held a neighborhood meeting in late March. In early June, we did some CCTV inspection of the sanitary sewer system, and we will be scheduling a second neighborhood meeting sometime this summer to gather feedback on our preliminary design. We've been in touch with several abutters about this project. We're going to have a progress meeting next week as well, and then we'll be able to finalize when that meeting date is and get that out to everybody. And then lastly is the Unitil work on Water Street and High Street. They've completed the gas main replacement on Water Street. They will still have to come back to do the pavement restoration before the end of the year. The work on High Street that was supposed to happen immediately after has been delayed. Unitil is now over on Main Street working on running a new gas main for PEA's project. Once that's completed, they'll jump back to High Street and get that done. So we'll update the schedule on our website.
You've been busy.
You've been busy.
Just going to ask if I could give you a couple other jobs I need done.
We're appreciative not only of this report coming out to update the board and the town this evening, but given all of the vacancies that you have, and you're all doing a tremendous job. So we appreciate you and the department and everything that you're doing. So, are there any questions for Mr. Cronin?
I don't have any questions, but can I just read a bit of the email from the chief, the update on the speed sign?
Sure.
So we received an email, because Mr. Cronin referred to it, on Wednesday, June 11th, from our police chief. He did confirm that we still have time to go for grants for the New Hampshire Highway Safety Grant Program for 2025 to 2026. So he'll be applying for 2 digital speed signs through the equipment grant, which will pay 75% of each sign. The reason why there are 2 is because they spoke, the chief, I understand it, spoke to some of the residents who voiced concerns for the speeding going both ways. So they're going to look to get 2 signs instead of 1.
Thank you. Mr. Chartrand.
I just want to add my thanks and my esteem for you and your department. The voters have laid out a lot of stuff for us to implement and for your department to implement, and you are doing a great job moving it all forward. So thank you, Steve. And thank you to your team.
Pass that along.
If the board will indulge me, I'd like to go out of order on the agenda while Mr. Cronin is sitting there. And then Chief Pizon will get to you, and we can go back to our regular business after that, because I like to send everybody home as early as we can. So I'll let you, we met, I think it was Monday,
Yes.
with Kristen Murphy and Melissa Roy, and Darius Thompson is now the Swasey Park trustee who will be working with this committee. Dwayne had some other commitments that would not allow him to work on that. So Darius was there as well. Excuse me. We looked at the proposals and came up with a recommendation.
Yep. So we received 3 proposals, CMA, Horsley Witten, and Geosyntec. There was a unanimous feeling among the members that met that CMA had the strongest proposal. We really felt that they captured the community outreach aspect of the project the best. That being said, their proposal slightly exceeded our grant funding by about $2,500. We talked about it, looked at that proposal, identified an opportunity for us to maybe absorb some of the scope. Went back to CMA and spoke with them about it. They agreed. One of the things that we talked about was the survey, as you saw tonight, obviously from Pairpoint Park. We certainly have the skill set here in town to administer a survey. So we felt comfortable doing that. We're able to slightly reduce their proposal cost to $20,000, which meets our funding. So we are looking for a motion tonight to award a contract to CMA for the Swasey Coastal Resiliency Project.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to award a contract to CMA Engineers for the development of a community-centered approach for enhancing climate resilience in Exeter Swasey Parkway in the amount of $20,000.
So moved.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cronin.
Chief Pizon.
Thanks, Nick.
Good night, Steve. Thank you. Bye, Nick.
Night.
Night, Steve.
There wasn't one. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm going to be quick. So I met with our finance director, Corey Stevens, and our town manager, Russ Dean, about a couple weeks ago now, just to go over, we had some unanticipated revenue show up. So back in early January of 2024, if you remember, the Atlantic Fuels fire in Epping was all over the news. It was a pretty big fire. During that event, 3 of our members, along with a lot of other people, had their gear saturated in fuel oil of some sort. That is one contaminant that we can't get rid of, so we had to dispose of those 3 sets of gear. Initially anticipated revenue, we filed an insurance claim with Primex, and I added in the packet that claim was denied. So it was left up to the Seacoast Chief Officers, which is an organization we belong to from Mutual Aid District. Their STAR team, which is the Seacoast Technical Assistance Response Team, is the hazardous materials response arm of that group. They filed suit against Atlantic Fuels, and so we kind of figured it would be a decade. I don't know how long it would take to get through a court system, but they actually settled out of court, it sounded like, and a check showed up a few weeks ago. So we were really happy, and it was unexpected. So trying to strike while the opportunity still is here. Our PFAS-free gear is scheduled to be delivered in the 3rd quarter to start, they say in September. So we're right on that cusp of seeing that new gear show up. We also have the opportunity, because that was a bulk purchase, we were able to leverage discounts on that gear that we wouldn't usually get when we buy individual gears. I added in a quote into the packet that showed you what one-off gears are, and depending on what trim level we honestly have with that, it's anywhere from over $5,000 to over $6,000. So right now, we have an opportunity to take advantage of the fact that we can still add some sets onto our existing order. 3 sets of gear is $11,006.43. It's $3,668.81 per set. And I'm here tonight to ask 2 questions. One is for the board to accept the unanticipated revenue of over $11,700. Give you the exact figure, $11,717.80, and allow the fire department to apply the majority of those funds towards 3 sets of gear. And that's really it in a nutshell.
Very straightforward. Any questions?
No, it's. Am I the only one that has questions tonight? Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I am going to ask, where would the funds taken to replace the 3 that are coming?
So that year, we took it out of our protective equipment line.
Okay.
That protective equipment line was earmarked for, obviously, other sets of replacements. So some people didn't get their gear replaced that year. We bought 3 sets to replace the sets that were damaged.
And follow up on that was additional these 3 additional sets that we're looking to buy, was that going to be a CIP item in
No.
your budget?
No, so we're not,
Okay.
we regularly, my budget's not finalized yet, so I still have conversations that take place, because I will admit that PFAS-free gear got here a little later than we thought. We had made some accommodations last year in reducing the protective equipment budget, knowing that we were buying new gear, so that budget has been significantly decreased. A conversation for the town manager and I and some other people on the budget committee to find out what we'll do next year, where it's coming so late in the year. But this is gear that we'll keep for 10 years, so it's got a pretty long life on it. We won't have to replace, obviously, for 10 years, so what's going to end up happening? We'll end up with more than enough sets for every person to have one set. So we're going to start on that backup set, reducing the inventory of backup sets, which we do regularly over years. Every year, we schedule for 7 sets. If we have new hires, they have new hires, we have to buy it out of, oh, bless you.
Bless you.
And other than that, though, that's where it came from. So it comes out of a protective equipment line.
Okay, so this was part of this is going to add to the plan that you kind of had anyway.
It will. So whereas a 10-year, we try to do is, NFPA says 10 years for a set of gear, but we only run a set of gear 5 years front line, because it gets washed a significant amount. All it takes is a car fire, or it needs to get cleaned. So this will just give us the opportunity to get people completely out of the PFAS impregnated gear and go to 100% PFAS free gear, with the complete intention of, after 5 years with the frontline piece of gear they'll be wearing, that will go into a bag and be a backup, and then they'll be using. This gear is going to get worn, but my goal is to stretch this out for as long as possible before we have to replace it again.
Yeah,
So
thank you, and I do appreciate, I just want people who are at home and paying attention to the beginning of budget season, that this money really is to repay for what we've got coming in, even though you
Correct.
took money out of the funds, but it's a safety thing. We were going to need them, whether it was for this coming budget or the one after.
Correct.
Thank you.
We just have an opportunity to.
We have the.
Yeah.
You're accelerating the cycle.
Yeah, that's all we're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I get it.
The quicker I can get people out of PFAS great gear.
Yeah, thank you.
The better off we'll all be. So I don't want to have people wearing gear that.
Yeah,
that's
no,
like-
I do appreciate you going into the details. I just
Yeah,
want to make
sure,
sure
of
people at
course.
home understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to split this into 2 motions. Entertain a motion to accept the unanticipated revenue from the Atlantic Fuels Fire Settlement in the amount of $11,717.80.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. And then I would entertain a motion to utilize the unanticipated revenue of $11,717.80 to go towards the purchase of 3 additional PFAS-free gear to the current bulk order.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you,
I
Judge.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
If I could, boss, just one quick point of clarification I wanted to make. The people that came from West Side Drive and made a comment, which I spoke to her, so she's aware of this, about the paramedics, worried about paramedics and the loss of them at Exeter Hospital with the Park Street. I wanted to make sure I clarified that the Exeter Fire Department has their own paramedics. We do not rely on any outside services to come into town. We cover those with our own paramedics. So I just want to make sure I said that out loud so everybody was aware.
appreciate that.
She was talking about folks coming from the west, right?
Yeah, so she actually didn't know. She said, I work at the hospital and see them go out when I was there, but she didn't realize that the town of Exeter employs paramedics, that we don't rely on that service. So if she had that question and that notion, then
great.
obviously others do, so I wanted to make sure I brought it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, we're going to jump back to you.
Okay.
We've got 2 abatements and an intent to cut.
We do, and before I start, I'm just going to give a heads up that I have a different number that's on this page. So
Okay.
Joanna's really good at catching me if I have a wrong number, so just a heads up.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move the following abatements. Map 60, Lot 9, in the amount of $103.18 for the tax year 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
This is a different number, Joanna. Map 110, Lot 2, Unit 105, in the amount of $133.38 for the tax year 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
And I move for an intent to cut for map 91, lot 42.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And last, we have a tax interest waiver request. I think we were going back and forth on, Mr. Dean, did you just want to speak to this briefly?
Yes, this came from a resident who is looking for an interest waiver on a past due tax bill due to financial hardship.
Okay. And just reminder to the board, we typically have taken these up on an individual basis, but have shown an interest in granting the waiver if there's a, intent to resolve the issue, which I think is clearly here.
Yes.
And I'm just looking for the map.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
is there a way to make the waiver dependent on the clearing up of the, so the bill gets cleared up and then the interest is waived? Can we do it that way, or do we just have to waive it?
Well, does the interest continue to
Accrue.
accrue, Mr. Dean?
Yes, it does.
So we can't really waive the interest until it's
Do you have an amount?
all resolved, right? Because we'd be waiving the current interest amount, but it's going to continue to build.
It will continue to build.
So we should take this up. I mean, I have no problem with waiving the interest for this individual, but we should wait until it's actually resolved.
I believe you could take action on it, but what we would do is whatever the interest was due at the time the bill was settled would be waived.
So the motion should reflect that,
The motion should reflect that. yes.
not the
With no
current
amount.
amount due.
With no amount, that's,
With the amount that's in the packet,
Okay.
with the understanding that it would change based upon the final disposition.
See, I find that confusing.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm not.
But do you understand?
I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying clearly.
Yeah.
I think that's confusing, though.
See, in this instance, the person is ready to pay the total that they have after
So we've done
certain
that
actions
before,
taken.
right?
Yeah.
So that's consistent with what we've done.
Okay. All right, sounds like I'm overthinking it.
And it's map.
I can do that. I can be prone to do that.
No, that's parcel. The parcel number in the upper left-hand corner, that's not the map, lot, and, what's the other one?
I'd like to move forward.
Map, lot, and unit number.
I think it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Parcel 95,
So that's,
lot 64, unit 37.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
the map,
All right.
yeah.
map, lot, and unit.
So I would entertain a motion to authorize a waiver of $1,597.76 in interest for map 95, lot 64, unit 37.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I think to your point, though, moving forward, maybe we sharpen this up a little bit.
Well, maybe just do it once
Yeah.
it's, we've got the money in hand.
Well, that's
Don't
the
do
thing.
it prospectively, do it retrospectively.
Right. That's what we recommended to folks when we had to do the
Right.
revaluation. Don't.
And then lastly, Mr. Dean, we have the DRA MS 535 financial report of the budget.
Yes, that's the
Approved.
report of expenditures from 2024.
And does the board sign this, or do we just approve it?
Yes, the board
Yeah, it's
approves
in
it.
this
and signs
packet.
it.
Thank you. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration MS 535 financial report of the budget, for the period ending 12/31/24, and further authorize the select board to sign.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Dean.
Yes, a couple of things tonight. One is the holiday is coming up July 4th. We will be closed for that day, and trash pickup will be delayed by one day for people.
Okay, thank you.
That typically get picked up on Friday.
So it'll be picked up on Saturday?
On Saturday,
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
And then two bills I wanted to mention that are in front of the governor right now. One is HB 475, which modifies the calculation of default budgets in SB 2 towns. Some details on that. Positions left vacant for over a year must be removed from the default budget, even if municipalities are actively recruiting. Obviously, this could prevent towns from filling essential roles and worsen staffing shortages. So that's a definite issue. It also requires default budgets to exclude funds transferred for one-time expenditures, even though such transfers are necessary for town operations. This contradicts existing law and increases administrative confusion. And then the third bullet point on that particular bill, which is now passed, forbids default budgets from including salary or benefit increases made after the previous budget was adopted. This limits the ability of select boards to manage staff compensation effectively. So we've got our work cut out for us.
Well, they haven't been signed yet.
They have not been signed yet. and
Okay,
they're-
so we still
they're
have some work we can do.
before the governor.
I would like to make a recommendation that the assistant town manager, and perhaps myself, because I'm familiar, have dealt with so many default budget bills in my career at the State House, to write a letter on our behalf if the board is, if it's acceptable to the board to have, to do that, to represent our position on this, which is that we do not think these will be beneficial to any municipality.
I'm fine with that.
Fine with that.
Okay.
Down here?
See you tomorrow.
Good.
So the three of you? Okay.
Yeah.
What is the timeline that you would like for that, Julie?
ASAP?
Tomorrow?
Yeah, we have no
I think
idea
I'm kidding,
when, we have no idea when they're going to hit the
Right.
desk.
It's
We have a little bit of time because they have to go to the, to be enrolled, which is where all the typos are fixed and that, et cetera, but not a lot.
What do you mean by a little, with the holiday coming up this week what do you mean by a little? Like next week or?
Well, I don't know.
Okay,
If the enrollment process.
Tomorrow, if possible.
Process happens
Work on it
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
So, and then another bill is SB 213, which is about electioneering by public employees. And it creates a misdemeanor level offense for public employees who, in the performance of their official duties, act in, and it puts in quotes, any way designed to influence the vote of a voter on any question or office.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
What happens at deliberative session when our department heads are talking on a warrant article?
I think we're going to have to get some legal guidance on
Thank
We
you.
are. That was the question that was asked several times by the committee.
I'm
and
asking it again, because
not by
that
you.
is a problem.
It is a problem, and
I mean, it's a problem even during the budget process, right? Because yeah.
So it calls into question our fact sheet process as well, which
Yes.
is really problematic because we use that as a information tool.
Yes, we do.
Right, to help
And
the
then-
voters understand what's in front of them.
We've always gone with the concept, Russ has always been very good about educate, not advocate. But we now need to figure out if even educating to a
Is
certain extent.
allowed?
possible.
Yeah.
yeah.
The fact
crazy.
that it's been made a misdemeanor level offense too is,
It's really frightening.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
for
hope
a
people
lot of our
really are
employees, they're
understanding.
concerns.
It comes from a small town issue that really doesn't relate at all to how we vote or, deliberative sessions, et cetera, but it just is, it's one of those single person issues that has come all the way up to the governor's desk.
Well, great, that small town needs to fix their own problems and not cause problems for us. Sorry, that was a little blunt, but it was
We
meant.
say it all the time up there.
So that's what I had.
Okay.
So were there letters not supporting either one? Is that one already done? I apologize, I missed that.
The data's probably still there. I haven't looked it up for this conversation, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Status of the air conditioning?
Can I defer to the assistant town manager?
Sure. So they're waiting on another part. It should be another week or two. We've got individual air conditioners in various offices.
I'm asking for it's tough. Our employees, okay.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but DPW has been incredibly responsive, coming and helping us with whatever that they can. But yes, it does get a little toasty in a few of the offices.
True.
Okay.
Sorry, and we hope it gets.
It's okay. They're working very hard in doing what they can.
I did see a young man out here when I was picking something up last week, and I offered to let him in the building to use the bathroom since it was way past hours, and I just appreciated him still being here.
You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Select Board Committee reports. Selectwoman Gilpin, please.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me first, and I would not be ready. I do have a rather lengthy going over the state budget for after all of this, but given the time and my 25 pages of information, perhaps I will do a public service announcement on the public access channel, not Channel 22. What's in the packet from the Municipal Association is very accurate, but they don't go far enough into things that are going to hit our tax bills, like the education freedom accounts and now the send your children to any school sending district pays. So just to alarm everyone. Hold on. What is today? I went to the facilities meeting with Mr. Chartrand, and if he can fill in the work that was done there, I would appreciate it. Dave Sharples, our Director of Land Use and Planning, and myself and Verity Breuer, a volunteer, we just appointed to the HDC, interviewed three candidates for a job that we got a grant for $20,000 to do survey work for the HDC on individual buildings. We interviewed the four, and we did decide on one, and we'll be coming back to you with the contract. Emergency. No, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Selectwoman Belanger, please.
So I happen to have that email with Mr. Cronin, so that's out of the way now, because I was going to do that as an update. I have a very short one. My Arts and Culture and Rec Advisory Board were both canceled, and I did have a planning board meeting where Foss Motors came before the planning board for a design review proposal to demolish their existing building and construct a new, very large dealership. So that passed for design review. So the next step would be for them to come back with their plans.
Okay.
And we now have a clerk. Mr. John Gruder is the clerk
Oh, good.
again. And if you could just bear with me 1 second. I think I attached it. I'm just going to give a quick update that Greg Bison sent me on Parks and Rec. Pool and camp are going strong. Planet Playground should be completed after June 29th. There'll be an announcement for the official ribbon cutting. They're looking for a Friday from mid to late July in either the morning or late afternoon to include the campers in the celebration. 10 Hampton Road has a new roof and windows have been installed. Mechanical work starts this week. This was, by the way, Monday, June 23rd. So the new senior coordinator started 2 weeks ago now, so I'll add a week in there. She comes from a unique background. You know her by her radio name of Lori D. How exciting is that? And bricks are still available, so go on the town website and look at that brick program. It's a good way to honor somebody in memory, or just want your family to be part of the new Planet Playground. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, before you go on, I forgot one really important thing that I took part of. On June 11th, the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance presented an award for exceptional preservation work by, people in the state were nominated. We wrote a letter to the Heritage Commission wrote a letter of nomination for John Merkel, who founded the Heritage Commission. This is a preservationist, worked on several large projects, the Castle on the Clouds rehab, Wentworth by the Sea rehab. Really, led the Heritage Commission and taught people things of what to look for, especially on demo reviews. So we nominated him, and he was selected as one of the four volunteer finalists.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, we had a nice ceremony up in Tilton,
that's
at
great.
the Tilton School, and now we can tell everybody. we weren't allowed to tell anybody until after the 11th. So.
That's great news. Thank you for sharing. Selectman McCown.
I have nothing to report.
Selectman Chartrand.
Given the hour, I'm just going to tell you what committees I attended, and if you need more info, please approach me. On Wednesday, the 25th of June, at 5:30, the Facilities Advisory Committee met, as Selectwoman Gilman indicated. And on Thursday at 1 p.m., the 26th of June, I met with that informal train committee, and our Economic Development Director was there. And that's my report.
Thank you. I had the Pairpoint Park Committee, but they gave their presentation, so that's all I need to say. And I also attended the Swasey Park trustee meeting, which they just went over their usual agenda, with some public comment from Mark Damsel, who was here earlier. So, correspondence, again, Mr. Dean indicated the trash and recycle pickup delayed July 4th. Those that are picked up on Friday will have it picked up on Saturday the 5th. The styrofoam recycling event, exciting, Saturday, July 19th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Exeter Public Works, 13 Newfields Road. We have a letter from Xfinity regarding automatic payments and paperless billing, and of course, the NHMA legislative bulletin. The board calendar, I'll go through that now, through September. July 14th, July 28th, August 11th, August 18th, September 2nd, which is a Tuesday, September 15th, and September 29th. Everyone good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All in my calendar.
Terrific. Okay, if there's nothing else before the board, I would entertain a motion to enter non-public under 91A 32A and B.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please.
Selectwoman Gilman.
Aye.
Selectman Chartrand.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. The board will be moving into non-public. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.